In the heart of rural America, nestled in the rolling hills of Iowa, lay a quaint little town called Willow Creek. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's business, where cornfields stretched as far as the eye could see, and where life moved at the pace of the seasons. In this town lived a man named John Harrison, a middle-aged farmer with calloused hands and a quiet wisdom that came from years of tilling the earth. John wasn't rich by any stretch. His modest farmhouse had seen better days, and he often scraped by on what his small plot of land could yield. But for John, having a roof over his head, a warm meal on the table, and the freedom to watch the sun set over his fields was more than enough. He was a man of faith, always grateful for what he had, never one to complain about what he lacked. John shared his life with his only son, Ethan, a strapping young man in his early 20s who dreamed of one day expanding the family farm. Together, they worked the land with the help of their prized possession, a sturdy Appaloosa horse named Rocky. Rocky wasn't just any horse. He was a loyal companion, strong as an ox, and smart as a whip. With his spotted coat gleaming under the Midwest sun, Rocky plowed the fields, hauled wagons, and even seemed to understand when John or Ethan needed a moment of quiet company. To the Harrisons, Rocky was family, a symbol of their hard-earned resilience. One crisp autumn morning, word of Rocky's exceptional qualities spread beyond Willow Creek. A wealthy entrepreneur from Chicago, Mr. Robert Klein, heard about the horse through a mutual acquaintance at the local livestock fair. Intrigued by tales of Rocky's strength and intelligence, Klein drove out to the farm with his assistant in a shiny black SUV that stuck out like a sore thumb among the pickup trucks. When he laid eyes on Rocky, grazing peacefully in the pasture, Klein's eyes lit up. "That's one fine animal," he said, adjusting his designer sunglasses. "I'll give you $10,000 for him right now. Cash." The offer hung in the air like a promise of easy fortune. In a town where most folks lived paycheck to paycheck, that kind of money could buy a new tractor, fix up the house, or even send Ethan to community college. Neighbors who overheard the conversation buzzed with excitement. "John's hit the jackpot," whispered Mrs. Ellis from the general store. But John, standing there in his faded overalls, politely shook his head. "Thank you, Mr. Klein, but Rocky's not for sale. He's part of our family here." The town erupted in gossip. At the diner, over plates of apple pie and coffee, people shook their heads. "John Harrison's lost his mind," said old Mr. Thompson, a retired farmer. "Turning down 10 grand? In this economy? He's either foolish or too proud for his own good." Even Ethan, who respected his father's decisions, couldn't hide his confusion. "Dad, that money could have changed everything for us," he said that evening as they sat on the porch, watching the fireflies dance. John just smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Son, life's not always about the quick win. Sometimes, what seems like a blessing could turn out different. Let's trust the path ahead." Ethan nodded, but deep down, he wondered if his father was holding onto some old-fashioned ideal that didn't fit in today's fast-paced world. A few days later, tragedy struck. Rocky vanished from his stable overnight. The gate was unlatched, and there were no signs of foul play, just an empty stall and a trail of hoof prints leading into the nearby woods. John and Ethan searched tirelessly, riding their old ATV through the thickets and calling out Rocky's name until their voices grew hoarse. The sheriff came by, but with no evidence of theft, there wasn't much he could do. Word spread like wildfire through Willow Creek. At the church potluck that Sunday, folks clucked their tongues. "Serves him right for not selling," muttered one villager. "Probably wandered off, or maybe Klein's people had a hand in it." Others pitted the Harrisons. "Poor John. That horse was all he had." Ethan was devastated. As they returned home empty-handed, he turned to his father with tears in his eyes. "Dad, how can you be so calm? Rocky's gone, our best worker, our friend. This is a disaster." John placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his voice steady as ever. "Ethan, in every twist of life, there's good and bad woven together. We can't see the full picture yet. Let's not borrow trouble from tomorrow." The days dragged on without Rocky. The farm work doubled. John and Ethan took turns pulling the plow themselves, their backs aching under the strain. Ethan felt the weight of it all, questioning why fate had dealt them such a blow. But then, one foggy morning, as the first rays of sun pierced the mist, an incredible sight unfolded. From the edge of the woods emerged Rocky, trotting proudly, and he wasn't alone. Trailing behind him were 4 wild mustangs, their coats matted but their eyes wild and free. It seemed Rocky had ventured into the forest, perhaps drawn by some instinctual call, and returned with a small herd in tow. The news electrified Willow Creek. Neighbors gathered at the Harrison farm, marveling at the scene. "John's the luckiest man alive," exclaimed Mrs. Ellis, clapping her hands. "Those mustangs could fetch a pretty penny once tamed." The local paper even ran a story. Local farmer's horse returns with bonus bounty. Offers poured in from ranchers wanting to buy the new horses, but John waved them off. "They're welcome here if they choose to stay," he said simply. Ethan dove into the task of training the mustangs with renewed energy. He spent hours in the corral, earning their trust with gentle words and apples from the orchard. "This could turn things around for us, Dad," he said one evening, his face flushed with excitement. But John remained even-keeled, neither boasting nor fretting. "Maybe so, son. But remember, fortunes will turn in ways we can't predict." For a while, it seemed like a fairy tale. The mustangs adapted quickly under Ethan's care, helping with the harvest and bringing a spark of life back to the farm. But joy turned to sorrow in an instant. One afternoon, while riding the feistiest of the bunch, a spirited bay named Thunder, Ethan was thrown off when the horse spooked at a sudden clap of thunder. He landed awkwardly, his right leg twisting beneath him with a sickening crack. The pain was immediate and excruciating. A trip to the county hospital confirmed a severe fracture. Ethan would be in a cast for months, unable to work the fields. The town's whispers turned sour again. At the barbershop, men shook their heads. Those wild horses were trouble from the start. John brought this on himself by not selling Rocky when he had the chance. Even the pastor mentioned it in his sermon, cautioning against unchecked ambition. Ethan, lying in bed with his leg elevated, couldn't hide his frustration. "Dad, this is bad, really bad. I can't help you now, and we're behind on everything. Why does this keep happening to us?" John sat by his son's bedside, reading from an old Bible. "Good or bad, Ethan, it's not for us to label in the heat of the moment. Time has a way of revealing the truth. Let's focus on healing and faith." Ethan rolled his eyes, the painkillers dulling his senses, but not his doubt. He spent long nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if his father's philosophy was just a way to cope with a string of misfortunes. Then, as if scripted by some higher hand, the world shifted once more. Just a week after Ethan's accident, news broke of escalating tensions overseas. What started as diplomatic spats erupted into full-scale conflict, a war that demanded American involvement. The draft was reinstated, pulling young men from every corner of the country into service. In Willow Creek, recruiters went door to door, enlisting able-bodied youths for training camps. Families gathered in tearful goodbyes as buses carried sons, brothers, and friends away to uncertain fates. But Ethan, with his broken leg propped up in a cast, was deemed unfit for duty. The doctor signed off on his deferment without a second thought. As the weeks turned into months, reports trickled back from the front lines. Heavy casualties, ambushes, and lives cut short. Willow Creek mourned deeply. Flags flew at half-mast for boys who would never return. Mrs. Ellis lost her nephew. Mr. Thompson buried his grandson. The town square became a place of shared grief, with memorials sprouting like weeds. One evening, as the harvest moon rose high, a group of villagers knocked on the Harrison door. Their faces were etched with sorrow. "John, you're blessed beyond words," said one, wiping away tears. "Ethan's here, safe and sound, while we've lost so much." John invited them in for coffee, and as they sat around the kitchen table, he turned to his son. "See, Ethan, what seemed like a curse, losing Rocky, then your injury, unfolded into something else entirely. Rocky brought back those horses, which led to your fall, but that fall kept you from the battlefield." Ethan's eyes widened as the pieces clicked into place. For the first time, he truly understood. The pain in his leg paled against the relief of being alive, surrounded by family. "I get it now, Dad. We can't rush to judge life's events. What feels like a setback might be a safeguard, and what looks like luck could bring challenges." John nodded, his voice soft but firm. "That's the heart of it, son. In this great big country of ours, where we're always chasing the American dream, bigger farms, faster cars, more success, we forget that not everything is in our control. We get proud when things go well, thinking we've earned it all. And when hardship hits, we cry out, 'Why me?' But there's a creator with a plan far wiser than ours. The Bible says in Romans 8 verse 28, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him." Even in the chaos of war, economic slumps, or personal losses, there's purpose. As the villagers shared stories of their own trials, lost jobs during the recession, families torn by illness, John's words resonated. Ethan, inspired, began journaling his thoughts, turning the farm's quiet evenings into reflections on gratitude. The Mustangs, now fully tamed, helped expand the operation modestly, but the real growth was inward. John taught Ethan to approach life with balance, celebrate victories without arrogance, endure trials without despair. Years passed in Willow Creek. Ethan healed, married a local girl named Sarah, and together they raised a family on the farm. Rocky grew old gracefully, a living reminder of life's twists. John, in his twilight years, became the town's unofficial sage, sharing his story at community gatherings, schools, and even online forums where Americans from coast to coast sought motivation amid their struggles. If you're reading this today, perhaps scrolling on your phone during a tough commute in New York, or sitting in a quiet suburb in California wondering why life dealt you a bad hand, remember the Harrisons. Maybe you're facing job loss, health issues, or the ache of unfulfilled dreams. Or perhaps you're riding high on success, forgetting the fragility of it all. In every moment, good or bad, hold fast to patience and faith. What seems devastating today might be your salvation tomorrow. Trust in the divine plan. It's always working for your ultimate good. Life in America is a grand adventure, full of opportunities and obstacles. But as John's story shows, true strength lies in staying grounded. Don't let pride blind you in prosperity, nor let sorrow break you in adversity. Everything passes, and in the end, time reveals the truth. So, keep moving forward with hope. Who knows? Your bad day might just be the setup for an extraordinary comeback.